Anisha, I know you're a newcomer to the speaking part of the program. It's great to have you on. We'd love to hear more about your background and what you're currently doing at Gilead.
Thanks, Sherry, and team for organizing the symposium and for having me. I'm a data scientist in the AI Research Center of Excellence at Gilead. And I support a lot of clinical operation studies in developing feasibility analytics of the clinical studies and selecting investigators, countries when the trials are being conducted and developing a lot of algorithms in the backend to support those decision making. Besides that, I have background in wearable sensors and devices through my research. And although it's not as prevalent in Gilead per se, but the pharma is catching up with all the regulatory, as you're already aware, with the devices, the AI, the other tech. Very interested in the topic of real world evidence and topics related to digital health.
No, that's brilliant. And if we can dive right into it, Anisha, I think we'd love to hear more about the parameters that are currently being measured through wearables in clinical studies at the moment, and how are they being monitored?
Yeah, absolutely. So more commonly, the wearables we are seeing widely used in observational studies, not so much in interventional per se. Even in interventional studies, you would see them being used as like secondary or exploratory endpoints, but we are a bit far from using them as like primary endpoint substitution. But they're used for rehabilitation, treatment monitoring, or even prognosis of diseases. And like aspects like quality of life, which are usually self-reported measures and are prone to like recall bias or like individual perceptions. These variables are actually giving us parameters to quantify essentially those parameters, right? And it not to replace the human perceptions. Those are really important pieces. We need to acknowledge like what we perceive, but to augment that with actually quantifiable data. Like that's the power of variables, right? So basically these will be bucketed into measures that are quantifying the intensity, the frequency, and or the duration of an event. So if you consider a thing like physical activity, how long you are spending time in vigorous activities, light activities, or how they are related to your quality of life or your cognitive health, your the nutrition that you're consuming, or all those things, or how many steps you are taking. Again, like that's like a frequency, right? And how intense is the workout or whatever other aspects that are done. So not just physical activity, your gait can be quantified now. Like your walking patterns. There is a pattern that you can get insights on the variability in patterns. Maybe like these are early biomarkers for diseases like dementia or so there are like lots of interesting research. And on that note, even sleep can get monitored, right? And you can actually uh, see the quality of your sleeps. I mean, a lot of devices are there right now which people are using. In sports medicine, particularly, muscle fatigue is pretty importantly tracked, and that's something some devices are upcoming on that end. Then besides that, you have like your heart rate getting monitored, even outcomes like the falls, which are very common in older adults. Like how can you track them? And most often they have they will fall if they need help, like and those then that's when like those trigger systems can help and monitor, record the actual number of falls that they experience. Or even outcomes like in respiratory or infectious diseases, like the coughing, or if and especially if you're having these diseases or viruses related studies being done in younger population who cannot really remember like how their sleep was, or uh, so really like all these different measures of the possibilities are immense. um, and specifically in neurological conditions like Parkinson's disease, where the gait signals are very prominently measured. So, or physical therapy where you are monitoring the recovery of your walking and uh, yeah, I think these are important use cases. And from head to toe, you can put the sensor at anywhere these days, right? Like you have headbands, you have even glasses or wrist sensors are the most common ones, which
Mhm.
everybody has like a digital device. There are more digital devices than the number of humans, I think, at this point. And then people are using rings and a lot of these devices or algorithms are even like regulatory approved or getting approval after like rigorous validations. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's an exciting time, like I guess, for wearables.
No, that's great. Just to sort of stay on the topic, like from your perspective, um, like have you seen any sort of parameters or metrics that wearables are current that, that you've seen that are being measured that are either being over measured, or is there any like specific maybe parameters or metrics that like need more attention you feel from the wearable space?
I think so right now the most commonly measured outcome is like the time spent in moderate vigorous physical activity. That's and like your steps, which I think the earliest research goes back to like late 1990s on this topic. So at this point, at least, that's like an established measure. But even so, that's not as commonly seen in the wearables. So I think we are very far away from seeing the use of wearables in uh, like in the interventional studies at the moment. But that's where the point of how meaningful is it or how it's actually needed or not in a study, or are
Mhm.
we that balance between, are we increasing the patient burden or are we trying to reduce it, because the intention is to reduce the burden, but are they having to like maybe even as simple thing as like they have to charge it like very often or keep track
Mhm.
of it. So is this like, so that kind of balance is really the key here. I think we're getting there, but again, like more research and is needed around this space, and like the open-mindedness of adopting and uh, really using these devices in the time, especially like with the age group like ours, or like which are already in the digital space. Increasingly, the trials will be using the devices.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And of course, there's a lot of usage now, in everyday life almost with AI and chatbot technology, enhancing all the ways that we're currently doing work. Is there any sort of like insights that have been derived from wearable data using this current sort of AI and chatbot technology in clinical research that you've seen from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So the amount of data that is generated from variables is vast, and the human analysis can easily miss the patterns in the diseases and the progression. So these AI algorithms, they can process vast amount of the data and help us generate like accurate or comprehensive insights into the patient health and help in finding like patterns or triggers or uh, indicate like where the meaning like clinically meaningful change in a person's physical behavior or anything is happening, and then that can trigger attention to the participant and uh, in the trial, or the patient and the healthcare provider. So in ways it can increase the engagement between the patients and the providers, and it can help them to stay like adherent to the treatment, like if they are prescribed something maybe related to physical activity or any other issue, like you can actually engage in that way, especially for managing chronic conditions. I think this is like real-time monitoring and creating alerts based
Mm.
system, and people who don't have control over it, like imagine like an older person living by themselves, they fall down like, uh, and a trigger is immediately sent to the nearest center, or even to their loved ones to know what's happening. So I think that's where we are getting at, right? And the help, like the help is immediately received. So, and that's possible by analyzing the data, in using all the technology that we have.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, it's a time saver already, and then I think in a situation like that, I think saving any type of time is going to be valuable in responding to uh, situations like that and stuff. So that's you're absolutely right on that. And we've spoken a bit about sort of measuring these different parameters through wearables, and then taking AI chatbot tech to sort of analyze and gain insights from that. What have you seen as sort of the main challenges for implementation, with wearables and implement and gaining insights and uh, data from those wearables, and considerations actually when integrating the wearables and devices into the clinical studies you're looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most important consideration is to establish the context of use and the intended population and meaningfulness, right? We don't want to use a technology for the sake of it. Like, is it adding value? Is it reducing the patient and even the clinical site burden, or is it going to increase it, right? So that balance of and is it absolutely needed? Is it augmenting my results, or is it just like a good to have, or is it a must need, or is it replacing something? So that establishing the context of use is important. As for the implementation, of course, data can grow exponentially when you're capturing from these devices. So we have to be mindful, like how long do you want to capture it? Are you capturing it only during the daytime? Are you, depending on your clinical study, right? And then the infrastructure support is so important, especially if it's a global study. Like, it's within US, you can still, manage, like, maybe you want to use the same device for everybody, so you are going to ship them, get it back, basic logistics. Or you're trying to go for like a bring your own device, but then you have to establish that standard, because each of these devices, like if you count the steps using an Apple Watch versus a Fitbit versus some other device, the numbers are going to be slightly different, just because
Mhm.
of the layers of the algorithms that are. So are you going to come up with like a metric, like there is a 6-minute walking test, which is an established test which people use. Is So what kind of standards are already existing? Can we like leverage that, integrate it with the technology, and improve it? That's important. And then device errors. This is technology.
Mm.
Batteries can die down. Or you're expecting the patient to charge the device. These are like so common issues. Or even the wristband causing skin irritations
Mhm.
to some people, right? uh, so again, like usability, user acceptance, and all these other are some challenges and considerations which should be looked into, right? Or and But on that, do want to say, like, the positives. I don't want to discourage people to not use the devices. So to be able to establish the like, how do we differentiate that the reason for maybe like the failure of the trial was a drug versus a digital device, right? Like, that's something to think about. Like, did your trial fail because you put a digital device into it, or was it actually the drug? So that's not something we have been able to. Uh, I think the pharma or healthcare in general is trying to understand better. So yeah, like that's my perspective.
No, that's great. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. There's a lot of outside sort of factors to consider, especially with the errors that you get from the technology that you're trying to capture the data from. I often find that I feel like I've walked more steps than my Fitbit is telling me, and you're right. You can't change you have to you can't control the human behavior of making sure we charge our devices to make sure we're getting accurate readings and stuff. I would
Exactly.
encourage.
And
Good.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say one last thing, that's why it's so important for to lean on the regulatory guidances from the FDAs or the EMAs and these other organizations to really lean into and support, because if they are being rigorous on establishing accuracy, reliability, validity, then uh, we have to work together uh, to make this happen with variables.
Mhm, mhm. No, absolutely. Totally agree. I would encourage everybody in the chat to connect with Anisha and all the other amazing speakers we've had in the first half of the symposium today. You'll find Anisha's details in the chat. So, Anisha, expect a flurry of LinkedIn requests this afternoon, probably from everybody that wants to continue the conversation with you. And if you want to, of course, find out more about the work that Gilead is doing, the information is there as well. So, Anisha, thanks so much for your time. I know you're super busy with all the work you're doing uh, in the uh, in the AI Research Center of Excellence at Gilead, and we'd love to have you back on the program to tell us how everything's going for sure.
Thanks, Jerry and team, for putting this fantastic symposium together, and happy to be here and share some stuff.
No, thanks so much, Anisha. Take care.